Harvard University is not going down without a fight. The Ivy League sued the Trump administration Monday after it threatened to cut billions of dollars from the school's research funding. This is a part of Donald Trump's ongoing crusade against the nation's elite colleges.
You may remember earlier this year, President Trump tried to strong-arm the school into falling in line with his demands, but Harvard did not cave. Harris Campaign's Battleground Director Dan Kinnunen defended Harvard. Let's take a look here.
Giving them taxpayer money. The National Institute of Health is funding most of this research is being cut or threatened to be cut that Trump is dangling here, that goes to tuberculosis research, cancer research, immunotherapy that saves lives. Most of the cancer treatments now weren't even around 10 years ago. They're saving lives as we speak.
Lawyer and Harvard Emeritus Professor Alan Dershowitz weighed in. Let's listen.
Harvard cannot win this lawsuit ultimately in the Supreme Court. Harvard has the right to teach the way it wants and to hire who it wants, but it has no right to get federal funding.
Columbia, Princeton, UPenn, and other Ivies have actually rolled over for Trump, but not Harvard. For 150 university presidents signed a statement denouncing Trump's government overreach and political interference. Was published this morning. So Harvard is fighting back the way resistance liberals want to see someone stand up to Trump, and now it will be a question for the courts. I think the strong argument that Harvard has is that there's a process for removing funding for a university, that the funding has been allocated already, and the president can't just unilaterally cancel that unless he goes through the proper procedures. Not that the funding is necessarily that Harvard is entitled to it. It just has to be done. Again, we come back into this. It has to be done by Congress. It has to be done the right way. So now I would be fine with them doing that because I'm happy to reduce federal funding to wealthy, elite universities. I don't want to remove the funding because I don't like their speech policies or something, or they want to restructure their department. I don't care about any of that. The funding should be reduced because
right, because he was trying to overreach and opinions of what the policing opinions of staff, faculty, students, really walking into freedom of speech territory.
Well, some of that.
Some of it. Others say that this is a guise fighting alleged anti-Semitism on campuses. They're not happy with DEI being brought up within college campuses, and so this is the Trump administration's really overreaching, and I think that's what Harvard is saying here, that we're not going to stand for that. And let's, big picture, right? Like big picture, if we take a look, students have been such a major part of cultural shifts in our country. When you think of sit-ins that happened, the Greensboro sit-ins, which then led to the civil rights, helped propel the civil rights movement, the Nashville sit-ins, the 1960s. There's been so many instances where students have organized, they've had opinions, and they've changed what's happening. They've stood up for something. And I think when you start to do this overreach, yes, they did. Yes, they did. I believe so. Well, you're entitled to your opinion. But yes, they did. And so I think that when you're starting to have now Harvard saying, we're not going to put up with this, they're standing up for a lot of students who embody that and say, you know what, we want to be able to organize and advocate and have our opinions on war, on not going to war. I think that's part of why there's such a big appeal for international students also to come to America, is because there is freedom of speech, and because they're oftentimes maybe even leaving places where, and you're smiling when I'm saying this, but there are so many countries where when you come to America, you feel like, okay, I admire our systems and the fact that you have freedom of speech in your amendment. So I mean,
freedom of speech is important to me, and I support the right of the anti-Israel, the pro-Palestinian students to advocate for the views they want. Frankly, I don't think it is even in Israel's interest to shut down these conversations, because I think the students' tendency to associate themselves not just with the Palestinian cause, but with specifically a defense of Hamas, a terrorist organization, is self-discrediting. And if I was Israel, I would be happy to have those organizations taking place at Columbia and elsewhere. But it doesn't matter if I agree with them or not. I agree they should have the right to do that. I don't think the university should be punished for allowing that kind of speech. DEI is a little bit different. Racial discrimination is illegal, and institutions that receive federal funding cannot engage in racial discrimination. Institutions can't engage in racial discrimination, period, regardless of the funding.
But DEI is promoting diversity and inclusion.
Well, that's what its backers believe. I've seen a lot of first of all, if it's if we're talking about making admissions and hiring decisions based on a preference for one race or another, then that is illegal, should be illegal, was determined by the Supreme Court to be illegal. So if that's what we mean by DEI, then they have every right to shut that down. If they're doing training seminars that encourage harassment of people for race-based reasons, then that can also be shut down, quite obviously. So it depends what we mean by DEI.
Right.
If we mean just more outreach to groups that didn't know about opportunities at universities, that's fine. Nobody has a problem with that.
Marginalized groups, and we can go into marginalized groups inside of the United States that have typically, been discriminated against. Affirmative action has helped in many ways. And so I think what you're saying is you're not for affirmative action. Okay. DEI, what I'm referring to when I talk about DEI specifically, is about more inclusion within the university, and you want to have diverse perspectives. You want to have teachings about backgrounds of other people. You want to learn about culture, about history, with respect to different groups. And so I think when we muddle the water sometimes, I think that we're talking about two different things, but it sounds like you're not for affirmative action.
Have you seen this document that was used in training seminars called The Aspects of White Supremacy Culture?
I haven't
This
seen that
is
one.
used in DEI training modules. It was come up by a activist person, academic or activist person named Tima Akun. It purports to list the aspects of white supremacy culture. It's been widely used in schools. It was on the website of the the African American History Museum, saying that timeliness and being organized and a variety of other traits, positive attributes, are a part of white supremacy culture. I don't think that should be taught to children.
I haven't seen
in
the document,
schools.
so-
I think that is made up
Yeah, I haven't
nonsense
seen that document.
and relies on
Can't speak to it.
racial. So those are the
I
kinds
can't
of.
speak to it. I can't.
Yeah,
speak
yeah.
to that.
I'm just
You know,
saying
I
that's
haven't
an
seen that
example,
document.
a specific example of something under the auspices of DEI that is taught in school, not even engaged with in like an academic context, but is done in training modules about racism in society. It is a bad document that should not be used. So if they're purging that kind of thing, I'm all for it. I think that it rests on faulty and racist assumptions.
Okay, so
that
let's
should
just
be-
say that's
should be
true.
Cleared out.
Even if you did disagree with it, and again, I have not seen that specific document, so I will not comment on that specific document. But still, we're just taking one document, and with a brush stroke, we're just making this part of the bigger conversation. And I think that really does a disservice to DEI.
But the biggest people, or and maybe you can propose other DEI consultant type people who have really good work, but
There's
the
plenty.
ones who are the
kidding
most
me? There's plenty. There's
Robin DeAngelo, the whole do you know that one, the whiteness pervasive, it's like she has like a view of whiteness that it's some contagious disease or something spreading through the air. It's the most utterly ridiculous nonsense I've ever had to suffer through listening to or engaging with or reading. I don't think it has any business. Look, I guess if companies want to pay this insane woman to lecture to their employees, I wouldn't want to work there. But go off, King. But it's not going to be federally funded if you're doing that. Is I think the point.
All right. Well, we'll have another discussion another day on this. I feel like it's not over for us.
Okay.
Up next, a thief steals DHS Secretary Kristi Noem's purse in a public restaurant, along with, get this, $3,000 in cash. What's up with that? We'll talk about it coming up.